welcome to Casually Dressed Deep Conversation with me, Greg Chalmers, and I'm joined this evening by Christopher Snippet Shields. How you doing, son?
Not too bad, mate. How you doing?
I'm doing well, mate. I've just dropped my watch in a flare, and I was trying
Excellent.
to make it. But I'm doing alright, mate. I'm doing alright. Climbed Ben Lomond today. My legs are hurting. My ego's hurting because I fell on my arse and all. But needs must, innit?
It's good with a half, like one and a half legs. It's no bad going, mate. It's no bad going, that.
It really isn't, mate. It really isn't. Anyway, boys. Well, when I say boys, boy. Our guest this evening is professional boxer Martin Harkin. How you doing, mate?
Good. Thanks again for having me, guys.
Not a problem at all, mate. Not a problem at all. It's an absolute pleasure. So, fucking hell, mate. That watch, mate. Anyway.
Is everything all right, mate? Are you good?
I'm flustered, mate. I'm feeling. You threw me after that grinder thing. I've been trying to keep that a secret. Anyway, Martin, how have you been getting on through COVID and lockdown and all that?
It's been, I suppose, I've just kind of in the same boat as everybody else. It's been, not to sound selfish, because I know that you get folk dying and stuff through it, but it's my boxing career's kind of obviously took a big kind of impact with less fights and less shows that have been going on. I was used to boxing maybe three, four times a year, and I was lucky enough to even fight once last year. You know, a lot of boxers are put in the sidelines and stuff, but other than that, it's just kind of on the same boat as everybody else. It's been tough, but hopefully that's it coming to the end now. You know.
Have you been training all the way through?
I no, all the way through. I started obviously with gyms being shut at the very start. I was, you know,
Watching Tiger King and making banana bread with the rest of us.
I was managing to do my own workouts, training, doing it in my garden, and just plenty of running, a lot of road work. But there's only so much you can do. It's hard to keep that motivation as well when you've not got your coach in the gym and your teammates in the gym and stuff like that. So it was it's hard. It was hard.
I suppose if you've not got a fight date in mind as well, do you know what I mean? You're trying to, you're just training for the sake of training. Do you know what I mean?
I think every boxer will tell you it's a lot easier to get up in the mornings and do your runs and go to the gym at night when you've got a target. You know, if you've not got that target, it's hard to keep pushing and motivate yourself. You know.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about how you started out in boxing.
My story, how I got into it, was my dad was a pro boxer. He boxed pro in the 1980s. He boxed for British and Commonwealth titles. So I grew up kind of through, I've said, learned behaviour, watching my dad train, and maybe like, for example, a lot of dads that play football usually get their kids into it. I was just kind of the same similar situation through the boxing, just watching my dad box, and I just I fell in love with it for a young age, and I took it up, started boxing amateur, had roughly about 70 amateur fights, roughly.
70?
Roughly thereabouts. So I started really young, I got into it really young. And I turned pro, what age was I? 20, just before my 24th birthday, I turned pro. So, and that's been ever since, still going.
So, how do you find the difference between, because obviously, like, amateur boxing is quite widely known that kind of amateur boxing and pro boxing is two different sports almost, isn't it?
Oh,
I mean,
100%.
How do you find the difference between, how did you find transitioning between amateur to boxing? And do you find it, to pro boxing, do you find it being a pro suited you better, or you find it difficult?
I thought my style was always, I took a lot of losses in an amateur because I always get better as the rounds go on.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can be a wee bit of a slow starter. and the amateurs is all fast-paced, point scoring, sword fencing sort of style.
Yeah.
And I think with pro boxing, you settle into it more. You've got even if you're behind on the cards or whatever, you've always got that chance to maybe wear a guy out or get to him as the fight goes longer down the line. So that's been my style. I've always been, like you say, I felt I've suited better to pro boxing than I did amateur.
Yeah.
So I certainly enjoy it a lot more than the amateur game, because it's, like I say, it's dead frantic, fast pace. And pros, you settle into it more and enjoy it more, you know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's quite a kind of plain to see that. I mean, when you look at you go to an amateur show, or you watch it like say for example, like you watch it in the Olympics and stuff, and you can just see these guys that are when you watch them in their style, you think, no, you've been far better suited to being a pro, just because of the way, like, they'll maybe be a little bit more kind of ploddy in their approach. I mean, a little bit more flat-footed, and they can maybe sit down in their shots and maybe actually kind of they're delivering more meaningful punches. But in actual fact, it's just you've got this guy who's just an absolute jabbing machine who can just bounce about and move, and he just jabs the head off you and then he wins on points. You know what I mean?
There's actually an old saying where good amateurs make bad pros and bad amateurs make good pros. That's an old boxing saying. I don't know if you follow boxing or if you're boxing fans yourselves, but all these top amateurs that were on Team GB and, you know, tipped to be big things, you know, like Audley Harrison never developed as a pro. Frankie Gavin, world amateur.
He was a world amateur champion, wasn't he?
Only guy for Britain to do it, and he kind of fell flat as a pro. You know, never really achieved what, you know, guys like Brad Saunders. When I was coming through, these guys were at the top, and maybe they turn pro with the big promoters and maybe have 10, 12 pro fights, and then they chuck it or they get found out. So it's happened to, obviously you'll get the few, maybe Anthony Joshua was a top amateur, and then obviously he's went on to win and do well. But
there's other guys like De Gale and stuff like that. They've all done well, like the guys that have done well. But like you say, these are guys that are maybe anomalies. I mean, they're slightly different.
Aye. Mm-hmm. Yep.
But no, it's interesting stuff, to be honest. Well, like you say, we were saying before, we've had a couple of boxers on, and we had Lewis Van Potch on, and we were kind of talking to him about obviously the role of journeyman in the sport, and his and basically, I was keen to think what your thoughts are, coming from the other side, being that you were kind of come through the kind of prospect route rather than jumping into the journeyman route.
You know, see, I see when you're there is money to be made in boxing, and a lot of these journeymen will make a lot of money they'll make maybe if they're fighting. See, there's guys like Willie Warburton, who's in my opinion one of the best journeymen. That he was better than some people actually were saying that he was good enough to win a British title, because he knew how to defend, he knew how to, and I think he had like 300 fights, and if you look at his resume, it's all like top prospects, top GB prospects, top amateurs that have turned over. You know, if you didn't know what you were doing, he would beat you. You know, you kind of gauged. You know, you couldn't have an off night against a guy, because he knows how to turn it on. But his ambition was, he never had that will to win or whatever. His was to make money through boxing. And it depends on. I think my personal opinion, I couldn't box for money, because when you're boxing for money, you can get. It's just no me. I'm a winner. I want to win, and I want to see how far I can go through it. So, but people, like I say, journeymen, that's their to make money. That's how they. Some of them do it as a full-time job. Some of them do it as a bit of extra cash. But it's never been I couldn't do it myself, to be honest.
No, it was something again. That was what Pucci was saying, that obviously there's a lot of people just look at their records and go, these guys are dreadful. But I mean, like there are guys like Pucci, like Christian Late again. These guys are just like had. I used to say to people, like, when you're looking at these guys' record, don't look at the numbers of what's in the win column, what's in the loss column. You've got to look at how many times is this guy fighting? How many times is he getting stopped? Like, you'll find like the good journeymans never get stopped. Do you know what I mean? Never, and then you go, also have a look at the draws column. You see how many draws they've had. That draw is actually a win. You know what I mean? like that's see a draw in an away corner. That's not like you know your boxing. You know that's not. Look, he's won that fight. You know what I mean? But because this guy sold a load of tickets, fucking, you don't want to. That's it. You want him to come back again.
Exactly. These promoters will pay these guys to just show up, do the rounds, make a guy, you know. Basically, they're paid to survive, to be honest, and let the guy who's, as you say, punted a lot of tickets and bringing in a lot of crowd. So, I mean, they're never going to get work again. I think, actually, referring back to Willie Warburton, he actually, he turned over a good prospect on a Frank Warren show, and he actually ended up winning it and beat the guy, and everybody was tipping this guy. I can't remember the boy's name, but he was a right good amateur, and I think he was like 8-0 as a pro, and tipped to do big things, and Warburton ended up beating him just through his experience, and he's a hardy bastard, him as well. And Frank Warren, I don't think he got a call for. These guys are used to, Warburton's used to Van Puch and all that. They're used to boxing every weekend, every week.
Yeah.
And I don't think he got a phone call for maybe 3 or 4 weeks after that, you know.
Wow.
So just for winning, you know, boxing's the most fucking. I'll not go too much into that, but it's the most.
Oh, go on, tell us.
Boxing, it's always been corrupt, but it's the most. It's a right bad derogatory business. You know what I mean? To be that goes on behind the scenes. If you're an away fighter boxing on another show, it's if you're the B side, it's you're really up against it. You're not just up against, you know, you're up against the judges. But there's a lot that comes into it that the public that don't see. You know.
Yeah, 100%. So, being that, I mean, obviously, more often than not, I think, am I right in thinking you've been a kind of home corner fighter, being that you've fought mostly up kind of Scotland direction. How do you find that, like, running a fight, like, in terms of selling tickets and stuff like that? 'Cause I know I had a friend of mine who was, he was a light heavyweight down in Southampton. He won the Southern Area title, but he had maybe, I think he maybe only had about 8 or 9 fights, but it was just the kind of try to sell tickets was just an absolute nightmare, and it drove him away from it because it just didn't become viable for him. Do you know what I mean? So how did you find that? Or how are you finding it? Sorry.
I think, well, in the very start, I've gathered as I've got more fights, I've managed to get more people on board that want to come and see me, especially for boxing. Majority of my fights have been at the Radisson Hotel, the St Andrews, which is like a dinner show. So thankfully, like, see, my manager Ian, he's got businessmen that buy tables for the shows, so that a lot of the shows are already sold itself. Right. But I know that a lot of these promoters make you sell a certain amount of a percentage of tickets, and if you don't hit that percentage, then you take a reduction on your pay. You know, so it's a lot of pressure if you're trying to train as well, and then running about trying to sell tickets, and you know, just it's a lot of pressure and stress for a fighter. I remember there was a pro for Clydebank guy called Gary MacArthur, and I remember he was boxing in the prize fighter, roughly maybe I think 2009 or 10, and his manager at the time was that Tommy Gilmer, who used to own the St Andrews.
Yeah.
And he actually, Gary was running about 11 o'clock the night before his fight, trying to sell the last remaining tickets just so that he could get his purse.
Jesus.
So he wouldn't get a reduction in his purse, you know. And that's crazy.
That's
crazy
not right, is it?
No, you should be in bed relaxing and focusing on the fight at that stage, you know. I usually try to forget about... A lot of guys are lucky enough to get maybe their family or their partners or something to help out selling tickets, but usually I'll try and sell the majority of my tickets and then have 3 or 4 days before the fight just to focus and chill and visualise, you know what I mean? You don't want to be fucking running about punting tickets at that late stage. That's just going to bring stress, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
Do you have a routine before a fight? Is there something? Is there like a thing or things that you always do before you go into the ring?
Usually I'll think about the fight and try to visualise scenarios or how it'll go. Or sometimes it's hard to gauge because a lot of guys will maybe approach the fight different to what you're expecting, and usually I just try to focus on myself and make sure that concentrating what I'm doing, and rather than worrying about what he's going to do. So I just like to go over, can I meditate, can I visualise, quite big on visualising. I think it's important to think about the fight, and a lot of guys go, I'll switch off before the fight and I'm not even thinking about the fight, and I think that's fucking silly to me because you're going to box anyway. You've been training for, and it's here now. So you need to visualise and you need to get yourself geared up for it and focused and try and predict how things are going to go and prepare for every scenario you might be under. What if they catch you with this? What if I set them up with this and things like that? You know. So that's. But I've got no superstitions or anything like that. I don't really believe in that. I just get a proper warm up, have a chat with my coach, and then I just kind of go time, you know.
Do you research the other fighter beforehand?
My coach does that. I used to do a lot of that and but now I'll just kind of watch them briefly, see if they're an orthodox or southpaw. That gives me a good indication whether if they're a switch hitter or not, if they're a fighter, if they're a boxer that likes to sit in the back foot, if they're a come forward guy, and then I'll just kind of maybe watch 1 or 2 rounds and then I'll leave it up to my coach because I just try to focus on myself.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I used to do a lot of that, but not as much now.
Yeah, I think who's been your toughest opponent then?
Like as a pro.
As a pro, aye.
Both.
No, actually, toughest opponent. As I've stepped up the web, do you know? No, my last fight, I lost my last fight, but maybe the fight before that, the guy he was a tough fighter. He was one of my toughest. But I fought a guy in 2018 that actually broke my hand. First injury I've ever had in boxing, and I broke my hand in the last round. And the guy just kept coming, and I honestly hit this guy with everything. I put him down in one of the rounds. Can't quite remember what it was, but he got up again and he just kept coming. And I remember thinking through the fight, fucking hell, I've hit this guy with my best shots and he keeps coming.
Aye.
And then I broke my hand in his head in the last round, and I was in a sense it was only a 6-rounder, but he pushed me the whole fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I remember just thinking, being fortunate it was a 6-rounder, because if that was an 8-rounder, I would have had to have boxed another 2 rounds with a broken hand.
Yeah.
So it was a boy for Cameroon, but he was a tough fighter. Ambombo, his name was Ambombo. and he's like one of these 50-50 fighters where he'll win some and he'll lose some, and so I would say so. That would be my toughest fight to date, anyway.
See, when somebody keeps coming at you like that, have you how hard is it to keep the head and no psych yourself out, or do you just have to keep ploughing at them?
It psychologically can be draining as well, because if you're catching a boy with some of your best shots that would take people out, but it's like you think you need to make sure that self-doubt doesn't creep in, and you need to kind of psychologically keep staying strong for it, because it's a bad place if you kind of.
It must be a terrible place to be if you hit somebody with your hard, but hit somebody with everything, and then they just get like. I remember years back I did this Joe Calzaghe DVD. I was talking about his fight with Chris Eubank, and he dropped him early doors in the first couple of rounds. And you can see Chris Eubank as the referee's counting him out, and he's just looking, Eubank doing that, the usual thing that he usually done, looking at him, smiling, going, nodding as if, yeah, well done. He'd be like, oh no. Oh, it's going to be a hard night in the office. You'd be like, oh, come on. Just stay down.
Do you know, I was, when you were talking about, what came into my mind was Josh Taylor fight Progress. That fight. Like, that must have been, see, mentally, man. As a spectator watching that was rough, man, because you're like, Jesus Christ. Fucking, I mean, see, for Josh Taylor to pull the win out there, that must have taken a lot upstairs just to stay focused.
He's an exceptional fighter.
Oh, aye.
He's probably one of the best from Scotland in a long time. Aye, he's that was a cracking fight.
Amazing.
Quite a close fight, right enough. If it was maybe, I scored it for Taylor, but at the time I remember watching it and but thinking if that was maybe stateside, he might have gone to Progress. Progress a cracking fighter himself, you know, and hopefully maybe see a rematch down the line, because it was really good fight, you know, really good.
Yeah. It was, as far as like boxing goes though, the style was so different. See, because they were leaning into each other all the time. It was very rarely where they stepped back. They were like kind of barging into each other and throwing digs in it, coming back in. It was bizarre.
It was like they were shoulder to shoulder, weren't they, the whole fight? The two of them. It was a great fight. Both of them took big shots as well, and Taylor's eye at the end of it was closed.
I know, mate. Have you ever had a like somebody hit you a right good shot and you thought, do you know what, that's the hardest one I've taken, or it's fucking grown out to there? I actually clashed heads one fight. It was my second or third pro fight, where a guy kind of came in and brought his head up just as I was on the inside, and it cut me just under I've got a wee scar just under my right eye, but it's kind of, sometimes when you're boxing they only stop it if it's severe and if it's going into your eye and it's restricting your vision. But if it's below the eye, they very rarely stop it unless it's a fucking gash, like really a bad one. But I remember my dad saying he got cut in one of his fights, and every single fight he had after that, it was just like scar tissue. It kept opening up. So I think you need to be aware of that as well. If you need to give it proper time to heal. But my dad, he'd scar tissue under his eyes, because if you feel there, that's quite close to the bone, just above. So these are usually the areas where boxers cut. But that was, I think, when did I cut? Must have been about 2017 or 2016, and thankfully I've not had any cuts since then. So fingers crossed.
Ricky Hatton was terrible for that as well. Like, he used to cut up like nearly every fight, like all his fights, because he was the same, just kind of almost like just thins out after you cut it, doesn't it? It's one of those, you cut it once, right. 8 times out of 10 you're going to cut again. You know what I mean? It's just
he I'm sure somebody told me that he actually got an operation to clear out his eyelids.
Oh, really?
And there was like old black. The doctors found black old bits of Vaseline. Now when you're boxers, like they use Vaseline to stop cuts. I think they use different stuff now, but they used to use Vaseline. They still do, but they use other materials now as well in the corners. But Ricky Hatton was found with like black blotches of old Vaseline inside his eyes.
Oh Jesus!
Wow.
You know,
because I mean, he would be like, he'd cut like early on in a fight, mate, and it'd be like just like slathered in it, just fast. Like, you would see him, he'd look like Jim Layton at the end of a fight. Honestly, he'd be covered in it.
Exactly. He's quite a bad cutter.
Yeah.
So, Martin, tell us about your first loss, man. That must have been hard to take.
Aye, it was. It was not so much like the loss in a sense. If I'd have lost, maybe with a close decision, you know, and if I performed well, I wouldn't have been as badly affected. It's the fact, like I get outclassed that last fight. I felt, fair play to the fight. McKinson, he's a tricky customer.
Yeah.
He had that style where it was quite a negative style where he would duck below waist height and avoid fighting and try and more rely on picking these shots and not the most exciting fighter to watch, but very effective at what he does.
Yeah.
And hats off to him. I felt it was quite a poor showing for myself, and I felt quite flat on the night. So it was hard pill to swallow.
Do you think that was because it was like a studio fight rather than it be, because obviously it was all the kind of COVID restrictions and kind of protocols put in place? Do you think that had an effect on kind of your preparation for the fight?
The preparation with sparring was limited. You know, I was driving up to spar. I was driving up to Aberdeen to get sparring with a southpaw. I was sitting 4 hours in the car, jumping out the car, sparring 8 rounds. You know, quite stiff and lethargic for the drive. And I was literally getting up at 6 in the morning, not getting back into Dumbarton, back home for about 5 or 6 at night, and I'd done that for 4 or 5 weekends solid. So it was like it wasn't the best prep. Like I spar, I like to spar before fights because spars are the closest thing to replicate a fight. And obviously the restrictions and no boxers not being in the gym. But the guy was second in Britain and he was, highly ranked. And I took the chance because if I beat him, I'm right up there, and
100%, man.
So I'm not going to. Like, a lot of these guys are sitting in the sidelines, want to fight. I want to challenge the best guys out there. I want to fight the best guys out there. I want to be the best. So the only way to be the best is beat the best. You know what I mean? I could have quite happily sat back and let my manager bring in another fighter to fight me up in Glasgow, but I want to make my name down south now. You know, that's where they. So, but I fell short. And I believe maybe second time round it would maybe different. But he's moving on bigger fights now, and I'm going to build back up. So, but it could be that boxing when no fans there sitting in a room, your cell, not allowed out, not even allowed out for a walk, bored, fed up. You've not got your pals to. I like to sit and chill out with my pals and family before my fights and just act normal. You're sitting there in a room watching hotel TV, and I can't even go into my trainer's room to sit and chill out with him. And I've maybe not got the support, but a fight's a fight at the end of the day. So he done his job, and it's just time for me to build back up to where I was at.
Do you think now though, obviously, like there's a lot of kind of stigma attached to kind of keeping the O? Do you find that like that's now that like that kind of that monkey's off your back? Do you maybe feel like there's maybe a little bit less pressure on you now, or do you feel like it's if the next one, if it, like say you fall short in the next one, then it steps you back again, or what's your What's your thoughts on where you're at
100%.
now?
I think my thoughts right now is 1 or 2 losses and you're finished in this game. You know, promoters will phone you up just to be an opponent for up-and-coming guys, younger guys, to make their name off of you. So you need to be. You can't take too many losses in this game, especially where I lost. You know, I got outpointed, and so it's important for me to make for the next one to make a proper statement and show what I can do. You know what I mean? Yeah, I can't afford to take another loss at all because it will just put me further down the rankings.
Yeah.
And I'm just not prepared to do that, you know. So definitely needs to be a big performance the next one.
So have you got any idea when your next fight is going to be?
I have, but I'll tell you off camera. I can't.
That's fair enough. Fair enough.
I've been told I can't announce it yet. It's going to be announced in the next couple of weeks. But it's for me, I'm only accepting big fights against big proper against high ranked opponents on big platforms. Because as I said, I've done that apprenticeship side of things where you fight the journeyman, you build up to 10-0. Now it's time to fight domestic level and see how far I can get. But I've been fortunate enough to secure a cracking fight, and it's really I can't wait to tell everybody.
That's good, man. I'm looking forward to finding out. That's good.
So how long do you think you'll continue boxing professionally for? Like, have you got like an age in mind? Do you think at that point I'm going to get a rest or?
Do you know, I've not actually set like myself. I actually was speaking to my coach the other day, and he gave up boxing at 28-year-old, and I says, Danny, why did you chuck it so young? Like, that's still a young man, especially in boxing terms.
Yeah.
And he's like, I was getting robbed. I would go down on away shows and they would rob me. I was quite clearly winning the fight, and the judges just robbed me, so I get scunnered with it and chucked it.
Wow.
Oh, but I think it's hard for me because it's something that I've done since I've been 10, 11-year-old, 9, 10, 11-year-old, and it's all over. But it's what I've had so many ups and downs throughout the amateurs. Took my first loss there as a pro, but I've still got that fire in me. I love it, so it will be hard for me to walk away. So I just choose to fight as much as I can and now enjoy it, because one day I will look back and I will miss it, you know, and I just don't want to think along the lines of it.
In terms of
just enjoying it just now.
Yeah.
So in terms of like venues, if there was one place you want to get ticked off boxing at, where would that be?
As in a venue to box in front of.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind if, for example, if Josh Taylor was to land a big fight in maybe the Hydro or the Brayhead Arena, some big public event. I would love to get in one of his undercards. You know, that would be, or even I don't know if anywhere in Dumbarton would hold an event, maybe a medal centre, maybe maybe something along the lines. I know that I went to a boxing show in Clydebank Playdrum. They held an event about 10 years ago in their old building. So I think maybe the medal centre would be a good wee venue for just so that.
It would be a decent wee venue.
It wouldn't be massive, but it would be maybe big enough for a crowd, you know.
Mm-hmm. See that's something again. I sometimes prefer kind of smaller seat. Like I said, I used to go a lot of my mates kind of small hall shows, and actually there are times when you're like, because you're closer to you're closer to the action. Whereas I've been at like went to see the Carl Froch fight years back, maybe 14, 15 years back, and it was in Nottingham, but you were like nosebleeds were miles away from it, and you're like going, you're watching. I'm literally paid 20 quid to sit on a plastic seat and watch it in a big telly. And you're going, I mean, it's good. I've got the atmosphere, but I can't really see what's happening. You know, I'm just watching a big telly. But so I mean, but I'm like that with football as well. I prefer to go watch kind of like lower level football, and because you're close at the action, you feel like, I don't know, there's just a bit more of a connection there.
Aye.
You know what I mean?
I would agree with that. I actually went to one of the big fights I went to was Jorge Linares versus Anthony Crawler. I seen his fight, the rematch, and we were right up in the back of the arena. And I know what you're saying; it's difficult to see. But if you're going to an event, you're better just like getting closer so you can kind of experience.
100%.
You know, it's more enjoyable that way, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And it's what the wee thing, there's the little things that you don't like. It's like just a difference in sound. Like see when you hear somebody connect with a different, there's that. It's almost like sometimes there's almost like a wee kind of hollow thud, and you're like. You can tell when somebody's connected, or you can hear if you've caught somebody, you can hear somebody like taking the breath away from somebody or something. You can hear these wee things, and you're like, he's fucking hurt. You can see it. You wouldn't necessarily pick it up.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily pick it up if you say you sat watching it on Sky Sports, listening to fucking Tony Bellew and commentary or something. You know what I mean? Like,
I love Tony Bellew, man. I love Tony Bellew. He's fucking.
I mean, I'm not slagging him off because he's bigger than me and he fucking probably punches a lot harder than that.
Have you ever seen the clip of him meeting Deontay Wilder? He spoke about this. So he's shouting and bawling at Deontay Wilder from miles away, and because I saw this, he was getting interviewed on something, and he was talking about how he was like, "Aye, Deontay, man, you're getting smashed and all that," and then he said that Deontay Wilder came up to him and he just went. Looked up and then Deontay Wilder went to shake his hand. He said his hands were about that size. He was like, "Nah, fuck that." No, I'm not pulling it out, Fred.
He's a bit of a hothead, that Tony Bellew. He's had a few scuffles when he was fighting with David Hay and that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He's a bit of a nutter.
But I think that's just how he got up for fights, so wasn't it? He just had to be kind of emotionally invested in it and just.
Some guys are different, aren't they?
It's just how people kind of.
He's not clinical.
Approach things.
He's not clinical. He's not. It didn't go in where like I'm just. This is just. Like, it's not like the Klitschko's. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think right. He had to be emotionally invested. It's strange. Like it was. But it's just how different people go about it, isn't it? I mean, it's interesting. It is interesting, but you're talking about. I think my favourite video with Deontay Wilder is one with him and Billy Joe Saunders had slapped him a bit of chicken in a Nando's in Belfast. Like it was just slapped him with that, and you just see Deontay Wilder falling a bit because I literally live in Northern Ireland now, like so it's brilliant. You're like. I've been in that Nando's. That's right. Deontay Wilder is there
a wee plaque? Is there a wee plaque at the door? This is where Deontay Wilder gets slapped fucking
blue sign outside. There's one of the blue signs.
Gets slapped fuck out with a chicken breast. Martin, what boxer do you admire the most, would you say, apart from your old man?
Oh, I liked my trainer trained. I don't know if you'll remember him, but it was John Simpson who won the British and Commonwealth titles. As in admiring him, I mean by his fighting style, because he used to fight on like Frank Warren shows and Matchroom shows, Eddie Hearn shows, all the way from home. He won the Lonsdale belt away from home. Took a few bad, dodgy decisions early in his career, and didn't take no for an answer. Stuck to his guns and worked his way back up, and eventually things worked out for him. He won the Lonsdale belt outright, because he won the Lonsdale belt. You don't just win it once. You need to win it once, right?
defend it 3 times. So it's one of the hardest belts to win, and he done that as a B-side opponent on away shows. He wasn't the home fighter, so he would go into a Lions Den and fight a guy. And so as a fighter, I admire him, you know, because he had that attitude as well, where he'd no self-doubt or anything like that. He was like, I'm fucking going to beat this guy here. And he said that the more the crowd shouted for the other guy, he wanted to quieten them down. So, you know, he was good, really good. I still watch his fights on YouTube now and again. So, he was probably the guy that I can admire as an attitude-wise.
Yeah.
You know.
So that's quite a story, but innit? Do you know what I mean? You just take, because see, like you were saying with your coach, like taking a few dodgy decisions and people are fucking ripping you off, and it must be so hard to keep yourself focused and have that like self-assurance. Like, no, I'm not fucking standing for this pish. Do you know what I mean? I'm just going to keep going, because I mean, if it was me, I'd have been like, oh fuck you guys, I'm getting him. Do you know what I mean?
I think I would go for a lot. Like as I says earlier, my coach ended up happened to him a good few times, and he gets scunnered with it, and he just says, "I'm not going to get a cunt taken at me here. I'd rather just walk away from it." Where there's other guys like John Simpson, he'd persevere and say, "No, I want to be a champion, and I want this to work out for me. So I'm going to keep going at this. I'm going to keep knuckling down and start winning these fights. You know, taking no for an answer. You know, and he beat some cracking names. You know, he beat he fought a guy that was 15, 16-0. Just knocked out Terry Matthews. Just knocked out a guy called Paul Appleby. Really stone cold knockouts as well. Yeah. And John went over him. He fought him. His name was Martin Lindsay, and he was tipped to be the next fucking world champion for Ireland. And John just went over him, absolutely grinding him down, hit him with, just outvolued him, outworked him, and broke him down and just beat him by decision, unanimous decision. All judges gave it to John Simpson. So
that's impressive. Like, see, getting a unanimous decision in the away corner, like it's some going that. Like, I mean,
must have been convincing that way, you know.
Must have been really convincing, because I mean, what was it? Was it the last Matchroom show? There was, I can't even remember the fight, but it was one of the fights. It's annoying me now that I can't remember it, but it was this. The boy had won. It was a Matchroom boy had won, but the way it was scored was just one of like literally. I think one judge scored it wildly the other way. It was a close fight, and then there's one judge just like wildly, like massive gap, like gave him every round, and you're going, there's no way this guy's won every single round. Like, I mean, it's like one or two rounds either way.
Sometimes you wonder what these fucking judges are watching as well. You know what I mean? Because whether you win or not, if you get a decision, that's fine. But the public have a big say, because they view it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, for example, don't know if he's watched it, at Cash Fruit and Lee McGregor fight. When was it? Last year? 2 years ago now?
No.
But fucking, you know, I felt Cash Fruit won it, and they gave it. It was on Lee McGregor's home show, and they fucking gave it to him. And you know, you think me as a fighter, if I get beat, if I won a fight like that, I would look at it as a loss for me, because I wouldn't be satisfied with myself. I'd be shouting and screaming and shouting to fight that guy again, so I could beat the guy more convincingly.
Yeah.
That's my attitude as a fighter. I think you need to beat a guy convincingly, or really like to stop him, to put an exclamation mark on the win. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's my view.
Nice.
That's admirable.
So, apart from, I know you can't tell us your next opponent or your next bout, but past boxing or past your next fight, what's your aspirations in sport? Are you going to go into coaching, or is it something that you're just going to leave behind, or?
Oh, well, I wouldn't like to walk away from boxing entirely. I know some fighters do it, but I see a lot of footballers that will go into coaching or maybe punditry or something like that. A lot of like, these ex-footballers when they're finished their careers. But I would rather, I'd like to get into maybe coaching at some stage in retirement. Although coaching's a big commitment as well, you know, a lot of people don't see it, but your whole life revolves around it, you know.
Yeah.
See if obviously I'm a professional, it's different for me, but a lot of the amateurs in our gym maybe say, I can't be asked going to the gym, I'm not going to bother showing up. The coach needs to be there every time to open up anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a big commitment for them. And if they put a lot of time and effort into a guy, and maybe they think the boxer goes, I'm going to try another coach, I'm going to move camp, I'm going to move gym, and switch coach, and they've just invested all their time and fucking bringing a boy through, training him, you know, spending a lot of their own time with him. You know, it must be a hard situation for a coach as well.
Yeah.
So there's that side of things, but no, I would definitely like to stay involved with boxing one way or another. I could never just walk away at all. My dad did that, but I suppose he's kind of still involved through me, watching me progress and watching my career. But I'd maybe say coaching. To answer that question, I definitely get into coaching at a later stage.
No, good. Right, gentlemen, I'm going to call it an evening there. Martin, listen, cheers for coming on and talking to us. I really appreciate it, mate.
No, that was great, guys. It was a good wee chat, and as I say, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Not a problem at all, man.
No worries at all, man. No worries.
So I'm just going to sign off just now, gentlemen. So thanks for listening, folks. Please hit those like and subscribe buttons.